You are now tuned into the DFPN, the Dat Feelin' Podcast Network.
This is going to be fun to watch.
This is Wrestling with My Thoughts. Welcome back to Wrestling with My Thoughts, the podcast. This is your host, Bred Like a King, Matus Kelvin Cayley. We are back in action, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, it has been such a joy to come back to this. I am back to the thing I love. Doing dialogue is great, but getting back to my wrestling, these are my roots. This is what makes me happy. I love talking my wrestling. And listen, I have a great show for you guys today. Today, I will be sitting down with the legend, Shane Helms. Later on in our show, you will get to listen to myself and Shane Helms go over his career. But first and foremost, let me get my shout outs out the way, guys. Let me shout out Audio Swim. Go to www.audioswim.com today. Premier Element. These are our sponsors, along with Get the Plugs. Shout out to all those guys. Shout out to my Dat Feelin' family, all the guys on the podcast network. Follow us at Dat Feelin' Podcast. If you are listening to this podcast, follow us on IG at Dat Feelin' Podcast, on Twitter at Dat Feelin' P. Man, look, I am just happy. I'm so happy. But listen, we are going to get into this show. Let's get right into it. So we start off our week. We are going to be covering, first off the bat, what one of the greatest, the most monumental, the most domino effect of a storyline ever in the history of pro wrestling. Without the storyline, multiple things don't happen, right? So it is the anniversary of the Montreal Screwjob this week. So let's dive into that and exactly what happens because of this storyline. So the tale of the storyline goes, Bret Hart was supposed to be leaving WWF. At the time, WWF, it is now WWE for the people who are just now coming back with me. Welcome. Bret Hart was the champion, and he held this belt with great pride. He didn't want to give this belt up. Story has it that he wanted to go out on his shield, right? He wanted to go out as the champion. He was at the end of his contract. He wanted to go out of the WWF the champion. He was going to WCW anyway, but he wanted to leave the champion. That's what the historical reference has always been. The reason that Vince wouldn't allow this, you have to go back to Alundra Blaze. Alundra Blaze was the WWF Women's Champion, and she ended up leaving the WWF right as her contract was up, going to WCW. Eric Bischoff convinced her to come to WCW with the WWF Women's title and put it in the trash on live TV. Needless to say, Vince was avoiding this heavily. He did not want this to happen again by any means necessary. He wanted that belt off of Bret Hart. So the Montreal Screwjob was a way for that to happen. So the story says. I think there is way much more to the story. In addition to what the Alundra Blaze impact of this happening, and more so that he just didn't want Bret to win this match. There had to be continuity in the plans, right? He has to have a champion. You can't leave the champion, and I need someone to place this on. Henceforth, Let's develop a plot. Now, multiple people, if you watch and believe The Dark Side of the Ring, the show that comes on Vice, if you believe any of that information, then there indeed was a plot. I think it was very simple, and Vince didn't want Bret Hart to leave with the WWF Championship. Nevertheless, the events happened the way they happened. They had very huge consequences. The Attitude Era is almost a direct result of this moment because Vince became a heel with the Bret Screwed Bret promo on USA. And if you go back and look at it, if you do watch The Dark Side of the Ring, Bret Hart explains almost in perfect detail exactly the events as they happened. And if you look at that promo that Vince cut on Monday Night Raw, it is clear that he has a black eye. So there's a little bit of validity into the story that Bret Hart pumped out. Now, whether that has ever been confirmed or ever will be confirmed remains to be seen. I don't think it will be ever confirmed that he actually did punch Vince. But if you look at The Dark Side of the Ring and you look at the video that they were explaining, it is very clear. It is very clear something happened. He walked away from that shit wobbly. But the impacts of what happened after the Montreal Screwjob. Again, I go back to the Attitude Era was almost a direct result of that, but more so in that there were domino effects that there's a bunch of what ifs, right? What if this incident had never taken place? What if Bret Hart was allowed to keep his championship? Does he stay in WWF? Does his contract get renewed? Because this incident single-handedly is the reason why he ultimately walked away. If there was any chance for reconciliation, that incident killed it. Shot it in the face, threw it on the ground, shot it again. It killed it, right? So what happens if Bret gets his way? Does a contract get renegotiated? Maybe, right? Maybe. Does the storyline get worked into where there's a nice feud between Bret and Shawn? Does Bret end up hating Shawn, right? And one of the biggest reasons he hates him is because of that event, because he felt like he was lied to, right? What if there was an honorable thing to, go out on the Shield on? Do we get Shawn Michaels at the level that he was? Does Stone Cold Steve Austin even happen? Does that even happen if Bret Hart doesn't get screwed over in Montreal? Maybe, but maybe that happens way down the line, right? Attitude Era is a very huge part in the success of WWF going up against WCW because their product had to be edgier to compete with WCW. Does the Montreal Screwjob change that, right? Because prior to that point, they were all superhero, or not superhero. Sorry, we have a superhero coming here later, but it's all good guy versus bad guy, right? That's the running theme at that time. Fans were getting tired of it, and then Stone Cold happens. Does that happen with Bret Hart, right? And they ran with this angle for a while, Bret Hart and Stone Cold, right? They did that, but at that level, does that happen, right? What changes? A lot of dynamics ended up changing because the proper antagonist had now taken its place. Does that happen without Bret Hart being screwed over? That is the effect of the Montreal Screwjob. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, feel free to leave me comments on it, right? Go to that fill-in on the YouTube, because this video will be on YouTube. The full Shane Helms interview, feel free to comment on it, will be available on YouTube later today. Comment on it. And with that, let's take a break. This episode is brought to you in part by AudioSwim. Go to audioswim.com today and upload your tracks for as little as $5 a track. Premier Element, UAE. go to www.premierelement.com and get your representation. They don't do just music, they do sports as well. And also, get the plugs. Go to www.gettheplugs.com. Enter in code INT15 on checkout and you will get a 15% discount. Oh, and you don't have to pay for them up front. They also accept Sezzle. Now back to the show. Welcome back to Wrestling With My Thoughts here on the DFPN. Want to give a really quick shout out again to our sponsors, Premier Element, Audio Swim, and Get the Plugs. And last segment we talked about the historical event that was the Montreal Screwjob and how its anniversary was this week. Another anniversary of something that we had is of one of my favorite matches ever in the history of wrestling. It's hard for me to say that I'm a fan and not include this match as the reason that I fell in love with professional wrestling. And even I had been a faithful watcher of wrestling up to this point for years. So I want to dive into everything that made this match fall, like just embed itself in my brain. And I am going to talk about none other than Rey Mysterio Rey Mysterio Jr. at the time versus Eddie Guerrero at Halloween Havoc. One of the most competitive matches, one of the best stories I've ever seen told inside of a wrestling ring from two individuals. And Rey Mysterio found himself on my radar that night. Eddie Guerrero, I had always been a fan of his, just of the high-flying style that he had. But Rey Mysterio is what introduced me to the cruiserweights and how I started to like the, so to speak, smaller guys. And you'll hear from my guests later on that looks can be deceiving, man. Like when it comes to the size of these guys, it doesn't do you justice, right? Television doesn't do them justice. I remember meeting certain wrestlers and being shocked at how tall they were, right? Because TV doesn't do them justice, especially when they're wrestling giants, as you'll hear from my guest Shane Helms later in the show, that he was wrestling a lot of larger people, so he looked small, right? But let's get back to this match. I'm digressing. This match didn't really have a build-up. It didn't really need a build-up, now that I look at it. It did have a build-up. It didn't have a huge build-up. So it was supposed to be the title versus the mask. And according to Mexican wrestling tradition, the mask is very important because it's their identity, right? The lucha libre is the identity of the wrestler. It is just as important as an arm or a leg. You lose it, it's like losing yourself, right? So that was the challenge. Rey Mysterio had to win, or he would lose his mask, which later on in history proved to be a very horrible idea because he finally lost it. But I'm gonna go back to this match. The start off to this match was surprisingly slow for two guys who could move, right? They gave you the technical aspect of the wrestling, a little arm drag here, a little headlock here, keep the crowd, okay, this is going to be a wrestling match. Something to convey that this is going to be wrestling. You're going to see wrestling. And then out of nowhere, at the snap of a finger, like a Thanos snap, it was just boom. Let's pick up the gears. And they were flying all over the place. Power bombs and Frankensteiners and off the top ropes out on the outside. Rey Mysterio at one time did a corkscrew Frankensteiner from inside the ring, outside the ring, drug Eddie Guerrero to about mid-aisle, and I lost my shit. I say this because you have to look at the time period of when this shit happened, right? This is at the height of the NWO. And these two guys, mind you, the main event for that match is one of the most talked about matches ever. The main event for that match was Goldberg versus Diamond Dallas Page. And the reason it's talked about is because the feed cut off, right? But that is it was a great match for all intents and purposes. But the match that stole that show that night was Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio, mask versus title. One of the most technical, sound, flawless matches that you will ever see. And if you have the WWE Network, you can look at it on, I believe, on YouTube, the highlights of it. You can look at it and see the story being told. And Bobby the Brain Heenan on commentary was just amazing because he was just losing his mind as well. Dusty Rhodes was on commentary, losing his mind at this match. Tony Schiavone losing his mind in real time on looking at this match. Please do yourself a favor. Go watch it. YouTube it if you don't have the WWE Network. If you don't, hit me up. I might let you use my password for like 30 minutes, but I'll change it right after that. But yeah, man. Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Halloween Havoc. Greatest match ever. Match made me fall in love with wrestling. And with that, I am going to take a break, and when I come back, we will go right into my interview with Shane Helms. Keep it tuned right here on the DFPN for Wrestling with My Thoughts. To hear these episodes completely ad-free, go to www.patreon.com/datfillinpodcast. Subscribe today for as little as $3, and you will get all these episodes ad-free. Again, that's www.patreon.com/datfillinpodcast. Now enjoy the rest of the show. Welcome back to the DFPN and Wrestling with My Thoughts. And as promised, here is the interview with myself and the legend, the longest reigning Cruiserweight champion in SmackDown history, the former WCW Cruiserweight champion, the all-around good guy, Shane Helms. Thank you guys for tuning in to Wrestling with My Thoughts. Enjoy. He is a former WCW Cruiserweight champion, former WWE Cruiserweight champion, all-around talented guy. In my eyes, this man is a legend. He is a true legend in the sport, has paved the way for the smaller guys, so to speak, in the wrestling business. But this guy is indeed a giant by his works. Joining me now, you may know him as the Hurricane, Sugar Shane Helms. What's up with you, man?
Nothing much, man. Thanks for having me on your show. We got a common friend, and I'm glad Emerson could put us together.
Man, I appreciate it, man. I really do appreciate you. Thank you for joining. So, first things first, man, you've been doing this for years. I first caught wind of you as part of WCW, a group known by 3 Count. So, how actually did you get started in the wrestling business?
When I was 13, I got involved with an independent company in North Carolina. So I was involved in high school. I was actually I skipped senior prom to go do a pro wrestling show. Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, it's what I always wanted to do, man. It was my number one dream, And an independent company came to the town I lived in. I lived in a town called Wendell, North Carolina, and I rode my bike a couple miles to the show, hung out till it was over, talked to some people, and I was just willing to help set up the ring, stuff like that. Just anything I could do to get a little ring time, because
right.
I was already in amateur wrestling in high school. East Wake was the school I went to, me and Emerson there. And so, and that's just kind of how it started. At 15, I became a referee, little young punk ass. still in high school wrestling at this time too. And at 16, in 1991, I had my first match. So that was that might have been my senior year. I graduated in 92, so I guess it was either in between my junior and senior years when I had my first match.
Missing senior prom to go do a wrestling match, man. That's passion. That's passion at its highest, bro.
Yeah, well, I went to the senior prom when I was a junior, so I'd already been there. I knew what it was about, so I was like,
I'm gonna go wrestle.
yeah. And but I was just a referee on that show. But I was going to referee a match with the Rock and Roll Express, and I was like, man, I can't go do a show with the Rock and Roll Express. Yeah, that's what I did. So.
You don't miss that. You don't miss that at all. So, is wrestling? So you wrestled in high school. Yeah. Is that like a common theme in the business? Like guys start out wrestling and it just morphs into that, or how does that play out? Because I do see like
not really,
a lot of guys have that background.
Actually, not as many as they should. It should be a common theme for a lot of guys. I never saw it's not like the Olympic wrestling comes on TV a lot. You hardly, especially back the years I'm talking about, I never even saw that shit. So when I heard there was a wrestling team and we get to do this wrestling thing, I'm looking for a ring, and they pull out this mat and I'm like, what is this shit, And but that was something I was just naturally good at. I went to the States my freshman year. It was something I just kind of had a natural affinity for, and it just kind of blossomed. But my love for pro wrestling started when I was just a young kid, because my dad was a big wrestling fan. So I would watch wrestling with my dad. Right. And so that's how it started.
This was in WA days, right?
Yeah. By the time you saw me in WCW, which was I went there at the end of '99. So I was already a pro wrestler at that for 8.5 years by the time you saw me in WCW.
Wow. So who were your biggest influences on your style of wrestling growing up?
I tried to kind of combine a lot of things, because I was smaller. In the business, I was super small. In ordinary life, I'm 6 foot. Right now, I'm 220. So if you see me in real life, not a small guy. In the world of professional wrestling, that is small, especially in those days. So I was looking toward, the Mexican style, the Japanese style, the European style, where the people were a little smaller. And I was trying to bring some of that, kind of combine it. And that's what people saw with Sugar Shane, when I was Sugar Shane, and I would high fly if you needed. If we needed to fight, I could do that. But I was also a very technically oriented wrestler too.
Right. So you spoke something really true. TV does not do the size of wrestlers justice at all. It really doesn't. Because you say you're 6 foot. You're 6 foot, right? That's not small by any means. But standing to somebody like a Scott Hall or a Kevin Nash, that speaks volumes. Like, and I think the thing that threw me off about it, because I had this perception until I met CM Punk for the first time. Right. CM Punk's about 6'4", and
he's not 6'4".
He's up there.
No, he's 6'1". He's just a barely teeny tiny bit taller than me. Yeah, he's not 6'1".
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he wish he was. He made a lot more money. No, like for me, he might have had on lifts or something. For me, everybody thinks I'm smaller because I would wrestle some of the giants, especially when I got to the cruiserweight division in WCW. A lot of guys were kind of my size. When I got to WW, what was F at the time, now WWE, like my first feud was with Big Show, and Big Show is a legit 7'3". So then I got Kane. Kane's 6'9", 6'10". Mark Henry's just gigantic. JBL, all of these people were huge. Right. And if you don't know how big they are and you see me there, you're like, oh, that guy must be small. Because, people see things from their perception. And then when they meet me in real life, like it happens every, convention I do, I hear it all the time. Like, man, you bigger than I thought. And so another time that really happened is when I left WWE in 2010. And so now I'm doing a lot of independent wrestling, a lot of smaller companies around the world, and they all have their cruiserweight champion. And so because I was the longest reigning cruiserweight champion in history, a lot of companies want to put me against their cruiserweight champion. But their cruiserweight champion is like 150 pounds. 5'7". And so then I walk in and like they got all of these ideas about how they're going to wrestle me, and then they say, "Wait a minute!"
It changes everything.
Yeah, I'm bigger than their heavyweight champion. You know, so I was like, man.
It changes everything. That's a perfect segue, because I wanted to ask, like, you came into WCW kind of in the window where the cruiserweight division was just off the charts. You had so many guys. What was that atmosphere like back then?
Well, for me, that was my break. You know, I mean, that was the first time getting being on national television on a weekly basis. You know, a big contract where, you know, I mean, before that, I was working a job in Wendell. I was going to college full time. You know, working full time, wrestling every weekend that I could. You know, so you're doing all of those things, you know, to try to make it to that level. So then I made it to that level, and dude, I was just happy as a clam. Like, whatever y'all need me to do, I will do, because I felt I could win them over. I'm gonna win them over with my skills, with my talent. So I'll do some dumb shit if they want me to. And 3 count, you know, 3 count was not my idea. I didn't grow up. Emerson will tell you, I didn't grow up on boy band music. I don't know anything about the Backstreet Boys, NSYNC. That wasn't what I grew up on. That was what they wanted, so that's what we did. But like I said, I did eventually win them over. And I mean, toward the end there, about late 2000, going into 2001, you know, when I won the Cruiserweight Championship, I mean, that whole division was built around me at that point.
Right. Whose idea was 3 count, actually? I actually did want to ask.
No, Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart always loved musical acts. Jimmy Hart can actually really sing, you know.
Yeah, I didn't find that out until they did Legends House, that he was actually like a great musical guy.
Yeah, and there's a couple like hits that he actually had out that had like big time radio play, like back maybe in the 60s, and I couldn't tell you what it was, but yeah, Jimmy is a super talented guy, and he had that idea for that boy band. But he actually thought that we would be fan favorites, we'd be good guys, that people would love us, and we were like, I don't know, you know, because but you know, the head of creative at the time was like, no, I think these guys are going to be heels, and that was the right call. You know, it was one of those deals where the girls liked us, but all the guys hated us.
Right. Just like boy bands in real life. It's just like
yeah. I mean, that's what I told people. I was like, you know why so many guys hate the Backstreet Boys? Because the girlfriend loves them. That's why. Right. They don't hate them because they can't sing. Obviously, they can sing. They're selling out tours, and you know, they're on the radio all the time. Obviously, there's a talent. The same thing with Justin Bieber. Like, if you ask people why they hate him, nobody has a real answer. Right. But their answer is because he's cute. You know, if his ass was, if he looked like Ed Sheeran, he's cool.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because his ass is cute, you gotta hate him a little bit.
So yeah, man. So 3 count. You guys had a nice run though. Being heels. It was you and Shannon Moore. Who was the third guy? I can't remember who the third guy was.
Evan Courageous was his name.
Evan Courageous.
Yeah, he's a North Carolina boy too.
Is he?
Yeah. He wrestled at NC State. So yeah, he had a nice little amateur background, and Evan was shredded. So he had a natural heat about him. Like, people just hated him because he had like a 12-pack, and so he would go out there and flex them abs and like
I couldn't remember his name, but I can remember his face. Yeah. Because he stood out. Like, that guy was shredded. Like, he looked like he could go. And all 3 of you guys, you actually put on clinics anytime you wrestled. And then by the time you held the Cruiserweight Championship, you were holding your own against a lot of top guys. So when WCW folded, what was the immediate plan? Did you think like this was it, or did you have a shot at going to WWE?
Well, you know, when Shane McMahon came to that last Nitro with WCW, Shane McMahon came, and you know, they kind of told us like, hey, we got plans for WCW. This isn't the end. But there was a lot of people there in that room that knew they were done. You know, and there was a lot of us, myself included, that didn't really know what that meant. So on that final Nitro, Monday Night Nitro, I'm going in the Cruiserweight champion. I'm like, if I can leave this night with this championship, you know, because I don't even know if I'm wrestling. I don't even know if I'm wrestling yet, you know, or who. I don't know who I'm wrestling, if anybody. But I was like, if I can get out of here with this championship tonight, they're going to at least bring the champions up, you know.
Right.
And so I had a match with Chavo Guerrero that night, and I was victorious. And a couple, week later, 2 weeks later, whenever they gave me a call, and it's like, yeah, we're picking up your contract. And a lot of the other cruiserweights had to relocate to Cincinnati because they weren't going to be brought up to TV. They were going to go to a developmental program, and I'm so damn fortunate I didn't have to do that, because you might not have ever saw me as Hurricane if that would happen. But luckily, I came right in, and I was rolling because we did the WCW versus WWF invasion angle, and that happened for a little bit, and it wasn't long before the Hurricane idea came about, and they gave me that ball just like 3 count. I was like, I'll do whatever y'all need. Just let me do my thing. And
you made that work, dude. I don't think anybody else could have made that work.
I don't think anybody else could have, definitely for as long as I did.
Right, for as long as you did.
Yeah, there might have been a couple people that could have had some good moments, but I had to make people believe in that shit. That was tough.
Yeah, people believed in it. Trust me, that was. If I go back and look at it, I'll get to what my most memorable part of it was later. But but yeah, that I don't think anybody else could have made that work. What was your influence behind that, or what drove that? Because
I would wear comic book shirts all the time. I wasn't, and like this is before all the Marvel movies. This is right. Now everybody's a superhero fan. There wasn't a lot of us back then, but I always liked comics. I always read them, and I didn't care that people knew. I was never one of those guys that I needed other people to like something for me to like it. Right. I liked it, and that's how it was. I grew up a little.
Back then, you couldn't just be a comic book fan. It was it was the equivalent of being a nerd. Now it's cool.
Yeah, now it's cool. But back then, it was just for nerds. But I didn't care, because if people call me a nerd, all right, well, let's lock up, and I'll dump you on your head. So we'll see how that goes. And I was a little white guy that loved hip hop, so I had to deal with that too. But I was just a guy, like I said, if I liked it, I liked it, and if you didn't like it, hey, that's your business. Right. So I would wear comic book shirts all the time. I had a tattoo of the Green Lantern symbol on my shoulder. Well, I mean, I still have it. One of the head writers there, Brian Gerwitz, and this is the guy that he wrote for The Rock. He wrote for Kurt Angle. He wrote for a lot of stars. This is a guy kind of just had his head in pop culture. And he kind of always wanted to do a superhero type character. But then I come along, and the invasion thing with WCW guys, it was okay, but of course it wasn't as great as it could have been. They wanted to do something with me different. And so they pitched that idea to me about being the superhero. They pitched it to me, and it was only going to be a couple months. Like, that was the whole thing. Stephanie McMahon was like, yeah, we'll try it out for a couple months. She goes, a few weeks, a couple months at the most, was her exact words. And I was like, all right, whatever y'all need. And it all came off of, because I did a backstage skit with Stone Cold, Steve Austin, which I'm sure you guys know. And like, the promos aren't as scripted as people think they are, especially back then.
Right.
Yeah, I was like, Vince McMahon was the producer of the segment, and he's like, you go in, and Steve will talk to you about your tattoo, and you guys just have a little back and forth, and then you leave. And I was just like, well, all right, and I'm nervous as shit now. Steve's one of the biggest stars in the business, you know what I mean? And I'm sitting there going, man, this is my first like backstage pre-tape in WWF, and it's like the Steve Austin.
So you're nervous. You're nervous.
Of course, yeah, dude. I lost a little bit of tan I thought I had. I was so damn nervous. And like I said, I don't know what I'm gonna say, because I don't know what he's gonna say. He's Steve Austin. He can say whatever he wants. I just got to get through this.
It's gonna be over too.
It's gonna be great. I just have to not fuck up. That's my mindset. I just got to not fuck up. And so anyway, he asked me about the tattoo, the Green Lantern. And like at that time, or at least around that time, the Green Lantern had this heel turn in the comics, right? Where he's a bad guy. And there was this book where Superman came in, and you saw this green hand come and drop Superman. So when he asked me about the Green Lantern, I was like, yeah, he knocked Superman out one punch, bam. And I don't know why the fuck I said it like that. I don't know why I started talking about the Green Lantern like it was a real person, but I did. And like I say, I'm just trying to be entertaining here. And then Steve Austin's wife at the time, she started laughing. So Steve looks at her, and she looks at me, and we just kind of go back and forth, and it just works so well. And like they had this vegetable tray and shit, and I had to pick one up, and Steve was like, well, have a tomato then. And I'm like, you know, whatever. And it was just crazy as shit. And so, and Vince had no idea what the Green Lantern was, right? And so like the week after, I heard this story years later. Austin liked me right away. And so like the next week, you know, and this was, I found out this years later, Vince is talking to one of the head writers. He goes, now what's this Green Lantern thing? And Austin happened to be walking by at the exact moment. And Austin like, it's the goddamn Green Lantern. And then he just kept right on going. And Vince goes, okay, go with it. And so it was crazy shit. Like that's how crazy shit in the entertainment industry happened. And so a couple weeks, the weeks that went by after that, they would come to me and like I would be talking about whatever, and they go, hey, we want you to, you know, kind of mention your match tonight, but just kind of start talking about like a comic book story with the Green Lantern or something. So they were kind of just filling it out to see what I would do, what I would come up. And I was like, you know, tonight Kurt Angle is in the ring with whatever Booker T. I can't remember exactly the details. And then I go, and that reminds me of the time. And again, I don't know why I was using that voice. Like no superheroes talk like that. You've seen Superman, Batman. Nobody. I don't even know why I was doing that shit. You know, and then dude, what's up with that? And like people would laugh, and it just kind of snowballed. And then, like I said, next thing you know, I did that for a couple of weeks. The next thing you know, here comes Stephanie. Goes, yeah, we're thinking about making you a superhero. And she goes, yeah, with a whole cape and mask and everything. What do you think about that? Because she wanted my feedback. And I was like, you remember Sugar Shane? I just wore the little wrestling trunks. I was like, well, I'm basically out there in my underwear now. So whatever y'all want to do, you know, I said, I'm game. When they first bought me that outfit, the first outfit they bought me was trash. You know, just bland, nothing to it. It was just solid black. It was just solid black. It had a gold H that was like italicized, right? Just slightly italicized on my chest. And there was a hurricane symbol like this right on my butt that looked like a bullseye. Like put your foot here, you know, some shit like that. And they brought me a Lone Ranger mask, and I don't know if you've ever heard this story, but this is one of my favorite Vince stories. Like I never really had a creative discussion with Vince at this point. You know, everything I had was with the writers or Stephanie. So they brought me this Lone Ranger mask, and I'm like, this shit is like trash. It's a Lone Ranger mask like you get from Party City. Like that thing, 99 cent, little string around it. Yeah, so I'm sitting there going, man, this is going to be terrible. I knew for me to make this work, I was going to have to commit to it. So from the time they told me about it, I had maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks to wrap my head around this. I'm trying to figure this shit out. How am I going to make this work? Nobody's done anything like this. Right. And when I got that mask, like that was a little disheartening because I'm like, man, do they, you know, are they not invested in it? Because the outfit, I mean, they did whip it up pretty quick. Actually, it was only a week. It was a week that I had to prepare. So they whipped that outfit up in a week. And I get it. Okay, in a week, that's all you can get. But I was thinking about that mask, and I was like, man, I got to go talk to Vince about this. And like I said, my ass nervous. You know, I'm just starting. Here I am complaining already. I didn't want him to think that, you know. So I go to him, and I was like, yeah, I said, Mr. McMahon, please, kind sir. I was like, man. So I was like, I don't think this mask is going to work. And he thought I was complaining that I didn't want to do it. That's why he thought, what do you don't want to wear a mask? And I go, no. I said, I don't want to wear this mask. I was like, this thing's going to fall off, and it's going to look like I don't care, like I'm not committed. Right. And then he realized what I was saying. He goes, okay. He goes, what about makeup? And this is my favorite best part. And I go, like the Road Warriors? He goes, like the Ultimate Warrior. And I'm going, what the fuck's the difference? But, you know, I'm like, okay, like the Ultimate Warrior then. And I was like, do you have somebody here that can do that? He goes, yeah, the makeup lady. Go to the makeup lady, Jan. You tell her some kind of superhero mask on your face. And I go, okay, so I got to go find this lady. And, you know, we did the makeup. And on TV, it looked great. Because at TV, she would do it. But at the non-televised events, which were Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I would have to do that shit myself, and it would look like a child did it. And it would look terrible. But I went instantly to like some of the seamstresses that would make the outfits, and I was coming up with ideas. I need this outfit to be better. I got to get out of this. But I also started making plans to get a mask made because I knew I needed to get out that makeup. And you can see the evolution of the outfit throughout the years. It would gradually get cooler, you know, a little brighter, a little flashier. You know, I got that leather mask, which, you know, added the cooler element to it. Because I was walking a thin line with that gimmick because it was comical, But then at the same time, when the match starts, I got to go out there and be serious. And
you got to perform. Yeah, you got to perform it.
So you walk in a thin line there between Batman and Doink the Clown. You know, so you don't want to be too goofy, but at the same time, I can't go out there and act like I'm too serious because I'm still in a cape and a mask.
Now, did that add a level of pressure on you?
My challenges were different because I had to be funny at some point. Most guys don't have to be funny, and most of them will try and fail. And that's the worst thing ever is when you try to tell a joke and it's not funny.
It ain't getting nowhere. Yeah,
that's the worst. That's the worst. So I would have to be funny. Then, like when the bad guys beat me down, I got to get that sympathy. I got to make you care about me too.
Right.
Then, when it's my turn to start kicking ass, I got to make you believe that I can actually win this match. You know, so I would have to take people through all of these range of emotions, and most people really just didn't have to do that. Didn't have to. Like, just being a wrestler is the easiest thing in the world for me. Sugar Shane was easy. When I did that heel run as Gregory Helms, and I was the longest reigning cruiserweight champion in history, that was a wrestler. That was easy. I could wrestle in my sleep. But to be a character and to make people love you, that's a different thing, and that's challenging, especially after the Attitude Era. Like, if you're just a good guy, there's a reason Batman is more popular than Superman. If you're just that white meat babyface, and white meat means, you know, white cowboy hat. If you're that guy and you don't have that edge, that's hard in today's environment. And
it is.
You got to have that edge.
So that environment in WWE at the time it wasn't the Attitude Era environment, but it was still a highly competitive environment.
Yeah, and it was right on the tail of the Attitude Era. And here's something too: when you brought in the WCW guys, you had the most stacked roster of all time.
Yes.
When definitely. I'm there in that era where I'm doing the Hurricane and the rise of the Hurricane, dude, you got Rock, you got Austin, you got Hulk Hogan, you got the NWO, you got Ric Flair, you got Kurt Angle, Triple H. I mean, you Goldberg. You got
the Hurricane was taken off like right as those guys' contracts were over and they were coming back in. So you still had that. Goldberg was there. Man.
Everybody, man. So like that roster competing with that, like that's the TV time I'm competing for it as against those guys. And then that's not even talking about the tag teams at the time. Edge and Christian, the Hardy Boys, the Dudleys.
Yeah.
You know, the Acolytes. It was the most stacked roster that has ever existed. And there's never going to be another roster like that. I don't know how there could be.
I don't think there will be. I don't think there will be.
Every show back then was an all-star show. Every single show.
Yes, definitely. So what was the decision to pair you with Rosie? Rest in peace to Rosie, too. What was the decision to pair you with?
Well, they liked Matty. This is his real name, Matty. And he had separated from his tag team partner, who went on to become Umaga. So they liked Rosie, and they wanted to separate him from Umaga in terms of presentation. The idea they got from Lost. There was a TV show called Lost. Did you ever see that?
Yes.
Okay, remember Big Hurley? It was like Hurley and Charlie. That's what we were making from. That's kind of where the idea come from. And so around this time, Monday Night Raw had moved from the USA Network to Spike TV. This was when Spike TV was the network for men, and it was going to be new and edgy, and it was going to push the envelope on everything.
I forgot about that.
So I forgot about it. Was going to be the superhero in training, SHIT. I was going to train him, and the joke was just to get the Hurricane to say, "Holy shit!" Once we get to Spike really doesn't want us to say "Holy shit" every week, and so now I'm kind of stuck. Wow. Now I got a 400-pound Samoan as my tag team partner. But the thing is, I loved him as a human being, and we designed his outfit, and that was one of those things too, was just like we worked so hard to make that gimmick up, because I think that was just, hey, let's just see if this works, and if it does, cool. We're not really going to do a lot with it. Right. But it just got over and over and over, and like when me and him became the World Tag Team Champions, that's actually my favorite championship win in my career was with him.
Really?
Yeah, because it was supposed to happen. Like when I was the Cruiserweight champion, I was the best Cruiserweight in the world at that time. That's supposed to happen. You're supposed to be the champion. when they made us a tag team, we were like, man, we don't know what we're going to do. And we just worked so hard, and we got over. We're selling more merchandise than any of the other tag teams. We're getting better reaction than any of the other tag teams. And it's like, but we just didn't know, are we ever going to be the champions? You know, are they going to, you know, push that button for us? And we knew we deserved it. And the locker room did too. The locker room. And that's when it's special. And so we won those.
When you get it. Yeah.
So when we won those titles, we came through the back, and there's a stand. The whole locker room is there waiting for us. You know, that's when you get those really special moments.
That was your favorite title run?
Yeah, you know, I mean, everybody, of course, I think associates the Cruiserweight Championship with me because it's still SmackDown's longest title run of any of all the championships.
Yep.
The longest championship run in that division. So that's what everybody associates it with. But like I said, and that might have been my best body of work, Gregory Helms, that heel champion. But just from an emotional standpoint, me and Rosie, we were never supposed to be the champions.
Right.
You know.
But you made it.
We made it work and made it happen, and just holds a lot of special place in my heart.
One of the most, was this actually a feud? Because it started with this. How was that backstage segment with The Rock?
Like, yeah, people like, it's called a mini feud, but at the same time, I always question, I was like, but people remember that mini feud more than they remember most of the other major feuds.
Right.
So, and that's what you want to do. What you want to do in any entertainment is you want to create memories that people remember. Like, there's certain songs that you remember where you were the first time you heard. There's certain movies that they connected with you, and you remember how you felt the first time you saw it, you know. And that's what you want to do in any form of entertainment. Well, the thing with me and Rock was only going to be that first night in Toronto. There was a backstage skit that we did together, and then there was a battle royal later that night where we ended up hooking up, trading punches. But that was going to be it. That's all that was on the books from a creative standpoint. But that first skit we did was so funny, and one take, just him going back, me going back, us reacting off each other, just the chemistry. Like when we was done,
this was unscripted, right?
There was some ad lib to it. I think we kind of knew some things. Like, I didn't know some of the shit he was going to say against me. I just knew that's The Rock. He's going to throw some insults my way. You have to know that. And be prepared to react. You don't have to know exactly what he's going to say, but you know he's going to zing your ass because he's so good.
He's going to throw one at you.
And so I remember when I was done, like that was earlier in the show, like the first hour, and the Battle Royal was going to be at the main event, I believe, of the show, if I got my details correct. But I remember when I was done with that skit, I'm going to go to the locker room and kind of rest, start to kind of warm up for the match.
Right.
And like, I got stopped by everybody. They're like, dude. And sometimes when you're doing something in that moment, like I say again, same thing with Steve Austin. I'm just hoping I don't fuck up.
Right.
you
knock it out the park.
Yeah, that's the thing.
There's a particular comment in there. Like, I for years I've wondered this. I was like, was that scripted? Did he mean, because he called you the Hamburglar?
Oh, yeah.
Did that just come out, or did you know that was coming or no?
I don't remember if I knew that was coming or not, but I knew it was fucking funny, and I had to do this thing like this. And like what I did was I bit my hand, and that was something I would do as the Hurricane. So I would bite my hand to not laugh. And I think I did it in that. I know I've done it a couple times on TV. There's a few people that will pick up on like that, and they think it's me intentionally being funny, but I'll bite my hand to keep myself from laughing. Some actors will bite the inside of their mouth. They'll bite their tongue, like they're trying not to laugh. That's a little insider TV trick for any of you people listening.
Nice.
He's like, yeah, you got the mash, you got the H on your chest. Yeah, you're the Hamburglar. And I'm like, damn. It's one of those things like when you get roasted and you just got to take it. Like,
yeah, you gotta eat that one.
I don't
know. I was like, if he had to known that was coming, because if that were me, I probably would have busted out laughing live on TV, because that
you can't.
That one would have caught me off guard.
You're a professional, but like I say, like I was walking down the hallway and I'm just stopped by everybody and they're like, dude, that's one of the best things I've ever seen. Like man, that was so good. Congratulations. But later that night, we're in this battle royal, which is a bunch of people in the ring at the same time. And The Rock was doing that thing where he spit on his hand and goes smackdown and send somebody out. He threw one guy out, threw another guy out. And then he comes to me and he's going to give me the smackdown. But I block it and I start fighting back. And that place come unglued. Like just every punch I threw, like they were whipping. And then he ended up getting rid of me. But you just felt that moment of those people wanted to see more. And that's what you. And so when it was over that night, I was like, man, I hope they noticed that. I hope they heard that, back, in production. I hope they heard that reaction, but you don't know. But they did. Right. They couldn't help it.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to. You beat him, right? Y'all had a match when you beat him?
Yeah, that come a couple weeks later. We had a couple weeks of backstage promos again because they just kept being funny. The one where I was hiding in the locker and I jumped out. And the Scorpion King got a tiny ding-a-ling, and he was reacting to all of that. And then, we finally have a match in Cleveland. Cleveland, Ohio is the main event of Raw. It was Rock's last match on Monday Night Raw, actually, was losing to me. That's such a weird thing to say because now he's the biggest star on the fucking planet, and he's about to be Black Adam, one of my favorite comic characters. So, but he pushed for all of that. Like, he had to agree with it, and he also pushed for it. Yeah, he's as gracious as they come. Down to earth, just one. They say people that say don't meet your idols, you just haven't met the right one.
Right.
A lot of idols are cool as shit, man. Rock's
definitely, man. Cool. Definitely. That brings me to some questions. So I'll fire off a question. You just tell me what you think. So, what was your most memorable match?
Fans will say that one. And I guess I have to say that one because that's the one that gets brought up to me the most. So, defeating The Rock, the last guy to beat The Rock on Monday Night Raw. So that's the one I got to go with.
Who was your favorite person to wrestle?
Dude, I got too many. 30 years in the game. It's hard to pick one. And I got to work some legends. You're talking about Flair. Like, I beat Flair on Monday Night Raw. I'm a little kid from North Carolina, Flair country.
Oh, so that's like wrestling God, man.
Yeah, so I pinned Ric Flair on Monday Night Raw. So, I got to work The Undertaker, one of the coolest of all time, And anytime I work Matt and Jeff, some of Matt and Jeff Hardy, my best friends, we were doing it, shows in front of less than 10 people.
Right.
So for us to go and do it on that stage was always special to me. But I was in the ring with Booker T, who I consider one of the all-time greats, and I was just in there with so many good people, man. I can't pick just one.
I get it. Who is the best talker in the business?
Right now or all forever?
Let's do one right now, one all time.
Right now, right now, Jericho and MJF from AEW, they're doing their best promos. If you want to talk all time, you're always going to have Rock, Ric Flair, Hogan. You're always going to Austin in that conversation. But the guy I put over the most in terms of promo was Dusty Rhodes. And here's why. Because he didn't look like he could kick your ass. All those other guys did. But after Dusty's promo, you would believe it. You know what? He is going to whoop that guy's ass. And that's what a promo does. A promo is for promotion. It needs to promote the next show. And when you heard Dusty talk, you would want to go see that. And so many people took from him. And Dusty, there was a couple people Dusty took from as well. But that was a guy, like I said, because he didn't look the part, but then he made you believe, like, Steve Austin, he looks like he can kick your ass anyway. So if he cuts a promo talking about kick your ass, I already thought you could kick your ass.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah, but Dusty, because I say he so didn't look the part, but after it was over, you always believed that he could. And then, then he would deliver in the ring as well. But the people in that conversation, it's hard that you're going to have The Rock in there. You're going to have Flair. You're going to have, and of course, Hulk Hogan. He always had his kind of standard shit. What you gonna do? But still, he would get you live.
Right.
Randy Savage, of course. Randy Savage is one of my all-time favorites. As far as the current, like I said, Jericho's still working. MJF. There's not a lot of real promo guys left right now.
Right.
Something that's kind of it's really missing. Well, especially now because with the COVID era, we don't have the audience to feed off of. So that's a big interest. But CM Punk, you want to talk about him. He delivered. Bomb. Yeah, the pipe bomb was fine, but my favorite promo with him was him and Rock when they were building up to their match. And he stole the line from a movie, I believe, but it was like, your arms are too short in the box for God. Like, he jacked that line, but it's that promo. And his delivery of that line was just spot on. And like, that's my favorite CM Punk promo.
Who are some of your top 5 wrestlers right now in the business?
Right now, I mean, each company has their different, you don't want to exclude any company, but if you're looking at Impact, their champion right now, Eric Young, is one of my favorites. I think he's fantastic. His run in WWE didn't highlight at all how good he is. In WWE, Roman Reigns is at the top of his game right now. He's I got him back here somewhere. If you can see him on the wall, it's my friend too. If you go to AEW with the guys we got over there, the athleticism of the business has grown so much. It's kind of, you don't know what you like watching a kung fu. It's like watching The Matrix. You're like, man, damn, I can't believe what these guys are doing. But you look like a guy, Ricochet in WWE, the Hurt Business are all my friends, So I love watching those guys. It kind of just depends what I'm in the mood for, and that's why I like pro wrestling, Because there's a little something for everybody. You'll see some people, they just punch you in the face. Some people are going to do 97 backflips. Some you're going to get some real technical stuff. So it kind of just depends on what I'm in the mood for. But there's so much good stuff out there right now. Definitely. And the women are damn at an all-time level right now.
Who's the best female wrestler right now?
Charlotte Flair is still the one. You got Charlotte Flair. You got Asuka. Sasha Banks is badass. Bayley's on the best run of her career. Those are the highlights from WWE. If you go to TNA, Deonna Purrazzo is amazing. Jordan Grace is badass. They got Kylie Ray. If you're down at NXT, and then AEW, you got Io Shirai. Britt Baker's badass. Thunder Rosa's badass. And NXT, Io Shirai. Which one is Io Shirai?
Io Shirai, I thought was NXT.
Io Shirai is NXT. That's right. The AEW Women's Champion is
Hikaru.
Shida, yeah. So, but I love Io Shirai, Candice LeRae, Mia Yim is somebody that I've had a hand in training and helping her.
Really?
And keep in mind, like when I was talking about how stacked the roster was back in that day, man, it was mostly men. We had the leader Trish, Molly. There's a handful. Jazz is one of the best women wrestlers of all time, but you didn't have 30. You didn't have 30 women that could go.
Right.
Yeah.
That could go.
Yeah. So that's really been impressive to see over the last 10 years. Just companies being willing to take the chance. Hey, let the women main event this time. Let's see what happens. Let's go with it. And some of them have just delivered. That's been really cool.
Knocked it out of the park. I think Shida and Thunder Rosa is probably, she's on my radar as one of the best out, right? She's badass. Yeah, she is definitely badass. I think her and Shida need to have a nice feud. So
Thunder Rosa still got contract deals with NWA, so I think I don't know how, because she's still the NWA Women's Champion, so there's still going to be some restrictions on what else she can do. But if she ever signs exclusively with AEW, that could get interesting.
Yeah, that can get very interesting very fast. Now, that leads me into a segue into another part of what I actually wanted to talk about. Your thoughts on the state of pro wrestling today. Primarily as it concerns with what's going on with AEW, right? Mm-hmm. So they are actually treating, or so it seems from the outside, they're treating the wrestlers like independent contractors and letting them do the Twitches and go off on if they want to go to New Japan.
Depending on your stature in the business, like any entertainment industry, what you can demand from a company kind of depends on what you provide for the company. And there's certain things that AEW, that they're going to be different from WWE. I know you mentioned the Twitch thing because WWE kind of put out an edict recently. And I had a big conversation about that recently. And thankfully it didn't get ripped apart, because sometimes when you try to explain both sides, one side gets reported.
Right.
And even though in that thing I
Right.
said, listen, this is what happens here, and I've been that guy. I was there.
Right.
I've done this. But so many interviews just get fucking shredded. When you sign an exclusive contract with a company, you're exclusive to them. And so if you're going out on doing other stuff without their knowledge or without their permission, that can create issues. Especially, and the example the most for me where it's the biggest issue is for people that are heels. Because wrestling is so unique in this aspect. This is the one aspect that's most unique about wrestling compared to any other form of entertainment, especially a ticket-driven industry. We're the only form that one of our goals is to go out there and actively piss off the audience. Nobody else has to do that.
It's true.
No concerts are trying to piss you off. No comedians are trying to piss you off. Nobody's trying to piss you off. Wrestling, we want to piss you off so bad. Certain characters want to make you so mad that you want to kick our ass, but you can't, so you're going to pay money to see somebody else kick our ass.
Right.
No other industry does that, you know? So if you're trying to create these heel characters on television, I don't know how old school you are, but Abdullah the Butcher. Abdullah the Butcher was terror.
Right.
People were legit afraid of him. You have any idea how sweet he was as a human being?
Right, but you couldn't let people see that. So
if you let them see that would kill it.
Right, in wrestlers' terms, it's kayfabe.
Yeah.
Right? So does that hurt? And this is primarily the social media presence. Does that hurt the kayfabe?
Yeah. Well, kayfabe kind of like wrestling has kind of let go of the fight against kayfabe. Like nobody really fights anymore. That hey, this is a show. Everybody accepts that this is a show.
Right.
You know, we know who's going to win these matches. All right. We might go out there and beat the shit out of each other. It's predetermined. It's definitely not fake. If it was fake, nobody would get hurt. That's a stupid word that most of us get annoyed by, because the word fake is never used as a compliment. It's always used to condescend and to make something seem lesser than. Right. You know, but we go out there and we do all these things. Our fans, pro wrestling fans, they want to believe that we're who we are. You know, and I use this example, like whenever I see Will Smith, you know, and he's had a lot of great performances. He was Ali, even though he was the Fresh Prince as a rapper. You think of all the movies he's in, you never think about those. If you see him, you see Will Smith. You know, if you see Jamie Foxx or Tom Hanks or Tom Cruise or whoever these actors are, these performers, you see the actor. You never really think about their character. Pro wrestling is when you see me, you see the Hurricane. When you see Steve Austin, that's not his real name, but people still see Steve Austin. His name's Steve Williams. Nobody gives a fuck about Steve Williams. That was something Hulk Hogan told me a long time ago, you know, because we were going to do an autograph session together and I didn't have the mask. And he's like, "Where's the gimmick, brother?" Because he was in the bandana. He's got the mustache, all dyed blonde. He's ready to go. And I was like, sometimes I kind of just do them as myself. And he just looks at me. He goes, "Nobody cares about Kris Kringle." He goes, "And nobody cares about Terry Bollea either. And Terry Bollea is his real name." He goes, "I care about the Hulk." And I go, "Damn." And it's one of those things like, I'm going to have to listen because it's Hulk Hogan anyway. Like I'm gonna be respectful because it's Hulk Hogan. I'm going to do it. But he was 1,000% right. I was like, damn it, that motherfucker's right. And so I do, you know, unless there's been a hitch in the giddy up, I always do my appearances in the mask because people want the Hurricane. And that's just how we different. So circling back, if you're supposed to be this good guy that people love, and then you're on social media being an asshole, well, that's counterproductive to the product we're trying to put out. Right. And if I'm Vince McMahon and I'm paying you $500,000, especially in this COVID era, $500,000 a year to be a good guy, and you're out there being an asshole, which is counterproductive to my product, I'm gonna have a problem with that. So I see that, you know, because there's one, I ain't gonna say no names, but there's one of their biggest heels. He's all the time putting up these videos of him barbecuing and shit like that. And I'm like,
I know what you're talking about.
I'm like, like when I was a heel, I wouldn't put up no shit like that. I would tell people, man, fuck up. You know what? I played that character. And two, like Titus O'Neil is one of my perfect examples because Titus was a heel. Well, then Titus does. This dude's a humanitarian.
He does amazing work in the community.
He does, and I'm not in a million years am I going to tell him not to do that amazing work. But once word gets out, I'm never going to boo him ever again. It killed any chance he had of being a heel on that show because nobody's going to boo him now. I ain't going to boo him.
Right. He's such a nice guy.
Dude, he is an incredible human being. I'm not going to boo that guy.
Right.
So that's
like,
how.
If you really knew Titus O'Neil's story,
you don't boo that guy.
Yeah, you can't boo this guy.
No.
Like if you really knew his story, there's no way you could boo him.
And he's an extreme example because I'm not going to tell him not to do that. His work outside of the WWE is of much greater importance than his work in the WWE. So he's an extreme example. It's just and there's never been anything like this to compare it to. Nobody in the 30s and 40s had social media. Gorgeous George was Gorgeous George. You know, whoever was whoever. Now it's different, and we're just kind of having to navigate this waters. It's not as black and white as it used to be.
Right. There's a gray area. Someone close to me told me that you can actually rap.
A long time ago. That's something that takes practice as well. If you get out of the practice, it doesn't come as easy.
So, who's your favorite hip hop act
of all time or currently?
I ain't gonna go current. It gets today's no boy.
It's great. I just had this conversation. I was just on MC Search's podcast a couple months back. And third base was real big because I grew up loving hip hop, but there wasn't a lot of guys like me that could do it. Not do it good anyway.
Right.
You would see a lot of bullshit, but all time, my favorite. Cool G Rap is up there. I got Road to the Riches might be my favorite pure rap song of all time, just because of the rhyme scheme, how he stuck true to that rhyme scheme throughout that whole song, and that's a long song. I mean, lyrically, you got to throw Eminem in there. Anybody that leaves him out is just trying to be edgy. You can't leave him out. EPMD, I was a massive EPMD guy. Of course, DMC. I remember my first hip hop artist I heard was UTFO, and it was Leader of the Pack was the song. I remember that. That's the song that changed me. I was like, that's my shit right there. That goes back to earlier when I said sometimes you'll hear a song and you remember where you were when you first. I know where I was when I heard that song, and I was 7, 8 years old, however it was when I discovered hip hop. And I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of these guys. I was just in the airport in Raleigh, Durham, and this was last year because it just popped up in my memory gimmicks. And I look over there, and Big Daddy Kane is standing there. And I go, oh yeah, I had to go up to him. I'm sitting there and say, hey, I don't want to bother, because I know how it is. Sometimes you don't want to be bothered, but he looked like he was in a good mood. He had a grin. Yeah. So I go over there and say, hey, I don't want to bother you. I said, but you're Big Daddy Kane, correct? And he's like, yeah. I said, hey man, said, I still know the words to Ain't No Half Stepping, man. I'm not going to do it, but I know the words. And he popped it. And we got on the airplane together. And then, somebody came and asked me for my autograph. Because I don't just go up and, hey, I'm the Hurricane. I don't do that shit. So, but then it was like, well, what do you do? And I say, I'm a professional wrestler. Oh, yeah. And so a lot of hip-hop artists are big in pro wrestling, too. Busta Rhymes. Busta came to a show in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And he was yoked too. That kind of surprised me. He's bigger than I thought he was going to be. And I was like, hey man, so and I saw him in Raleigh and so he was on the undercard. Tribe was the main event, but then he came out at the end with Tribe and did Scenario. Oh wow! And the fucking place went bananas. The whole place went bananas, and it's one of my favorite. I get goosebumps thinking about it. It's one of my favorite concert experiences. So I was sitting there kind of telling that story, and I was like, "Yeah, man. So you can I take a picture with you?" He goes, "Yeah, let's do your pose." So he knew my shit, and I was like, oh. But even better, I'll give you another big one for that. In that regard, I saw LL in the Atlanta airport. And he's got his entourage with him, and I was Sugar Shane at this time. I was WC. I was still in 3 count. I hadn't broke off yet. I was still in 3 count, and I've heard all of LL's stuff. Every now and then there would be a wrestling reference in there. Not a lot, but he would sneak one in.
Yep.
I went up to him and I said, hey, I work with WCW. That's all I said. I work with WCW. I said, if you ever want to come to a show, I'm sure they would love to have you there, man. I said, I'm a big fan. And I'd asked him for his autograph. I got that shit. I got 2 autographs I kept from hip hop artists. I got LL and Tupac. Still got them to this day.
Oh, man.
But with LL, when LL, I said, man, if you ever want to come to a show, I know they would take care of you, and, that'd be cool. And he goes, wait a minute. He goes, you a wrestler? And I go, yeah. And he goes, 3 count. And he threw up the fingers, and I go, yeah! Like, my fucking head's full up. I'm like, I can't believe LL knows who I am. So that was cool as shit.
Yeah, man. It's I say this a lot, but the rap and wrestling relationship is so close knit. Even now, one of the biggest hip hop artists out right now is Benny the Butcher. Benny the Butcher. Benny the Butcher. Well, everybody at Griselda, they have like wrestling references. So like Benny the Butcher and Conway are known as the Butcher and the Blade, like the tag team from AEW. Okay. And, Conway and Westside Gunn are known as Hall and Nash. So even today, those references come out and they play a lot of into the way wrestling influences hip hop still to this day. So
that's cool, man.
Yeah, it's pretty dope. It's pretty dope. The comparison between the two is unparalleled, man. Even the rise. So like the underground is kind of like your indies.
Well, all music is like that.
Yeah. All music
wrestling is very similar to the music industry because you're going to play those dive bars, and some of the best bands you've ever heard are not going to make it.
Yep.
That's just how entertainment is. But you can go sometimes to these dive bars, and maybe it's just because you had the right amount of elixir. Who knows what happened? But that's going to be the best music you've ever heard in your life. And it'll be. It doesn't have to necessarily be with 20,000 other people for sure. Right. Have you heard of Have you heard of Sarface?
Sarface? No, I haven't.
I'll send you a link to one of his songs, man. He's got some good shit with a bunch of.
Send it, man.
He's got a clip of Road Warrior Hawk's promos in there. It's pretty cool.
Oh man, I bet that shit is funny because they used to cut some. They used to cut some awesome promos. I bet it's funny. Yeah, send me the link. I'll definitely listen to it, man. But that's all I got, man. I want to thank you for lending me your time, man. Yeah. This was dope, man. Really, really dope. Thank you for lending me your time. Thank you for walking the memory lane with me. This is Shane Helms. Thank y'all for tuning in today, and you guys have a great day.